Hi, this is Mike Power, President and CEO of Silver Range Resources, and this is an update on our Strongbox property. First, a quick word from our lawyers. Strongbox is located northwest of Beatty and southwest of Gold Point on the California-Nevada border. It's quite close to Death Valley, and it's located in the prolific Walker Lane. The Walker Lane is an 800-kilometer long by 100-kilometer wide fault zone that runs from Southern California along the Nevada-California border up into Northern California, where it ends against the Cascade Arch. What it is actually the new San Andreas Fault. It began down in Southern California about 23 million years ago, and it slowly propagated north like a crack in your windshield up to the Cascade Arch, where it's currently ended right now. Displacement across the fault is right lateral, so there's a component that's shifting the Sierra Nevada block north relative to North America, but it's also an extensional component that's moving the Sierra Nevada block away from North America. In detail, it's a topographic trough. In the center part of the zone, it's bounded by a series of northwest striking strike slip faults. These are the major faults, and there's a bunch of subordinate faults in here. And the Strongbox property occurs on the margins of the Walker Lane central belt here, and in a zone of transtension. Now, transtension is a fancy word for a fault that involves both strike slip displacement and expansion or extension, resulting in normal faulting. In detail, these tend to form extensional duplexes like this down here. You can see they're bounded by strike slip faults, and in between are a whole series of normal faults. And these are dandy areas to go look for ore deposits because normal faults open up pathways for hydrothermal fluids. What they typically manifest themselves at are sort of flower structures like this. In plan, they'll have this sort of pattern here. In cross-section, they look a bit like this. The Walker Lane is noted for high-grade gold and silver deposits. Some very famous ones. There's the Comstock up here, and Tonopah and Goldfields down here, and there are other numerous smaller high-grade gold and silver camps along the Walker Lane. And these are associated with tertiary volcanics. And that's the dominant kind of deposit you find here, although there's copper porphyries in the Yarrington area. Strongbox is located away from all of these major epithermal camps, and it appears to be something different. So here's Strongbox, outlined in red. It occurs in this sea of pink rocks. These are Jurassic granites. They're cut by these northwest striking strike slip faults. These are the big major faults in the Walker Lane, and here are the subordinate faults. Let's zoom in a bit, lay the geology on it, and you see that in the immediate Strongbox area, the bedrock at lower elevations is entirely granite. At the higher elevations in the mountains, you see more recent volcanics, including capping basalts. But for the most part, this is a sea of granite. And for that reason, this area has largely been overlooked by modern prospectors because the prevailing thinking is that there's no gold in granites in the Walker Lane. History would suggest otherwise. There have been gold placer operations in this area since before Nevada was a state, first by the Spanish and later by Chinese miners who moved into the upper regions of Tule Canyon in the 1860s. They were followed by hard rock prospectors. Most notable among these was Jack Longstreet, a famous prospector, gunman, and all-around bad hombre who ended his career in the Amargosa Valley area exploring the Tule Canyon region for the lost Breyfogle mine. In 1906, Harry Stimler, one of the three that found Goldfield, moved into the area and led a rush to Roosevelt Canyon, about 2 miles north of Strongbox. Unfortunately, that rush fizzled out. But since the 1860s, there have been sporadic placer and hard rock gold operations throughout this district, most of them undocumented. This is a map from a 1951 Desert History magazine showing mine workings in the Tule Canyon area. In the lower end of Tule Canyon, where Strongbox is located, a character named Tom Jaggers moved in the 1890s. He ran a small hard rock operation down there he called his Dark Secret Mine, the remnants of which consisted of an arrastra in the 1950s. He was noted for going into town always wearing a top hat, a Prince Albert coat, and being very heavily armed. In more modern times, there have been dry wash placer operations, such as you see on the left, and on the east side of Tule Canyon, a fairly modern underground hard rock operation mining some small veins. Neither of these are documented. It's easy to see why Tom Jaggers liked this area. This is a plot of grab and chip sample results from 2016 through 2018. What's notable is the high proportion, better than a third of sample results better than 5 grams per ton. Let's zoom in on the area to the west here in the region of Tule Canyon, where most of the gold is located. Gold in this area straddles both sides of the creek, and it's dominantly found in bedrock exposures down in the canyon bottom, where there's bedrock exposed on either sides. There are two areas where you can see mineralization. The Dark Secret Mine is located on the west side of Tule Canyon and consists of a number of small workings, including some underground workings here. And this was the area Tom Jaggers worked. A more modern provenance is this East Side mine, which was worked in the 1980s and is largely undocumented. And it's on the east side of the canyon, right in the canyon wall. Chip sample results to date include 0.7 meters at 37 grams from a vein just about 40 meters up from the Dark Secret Mine. And underground sampling over here returned 0.3 meters at 5.25 grams. There's a large alteration zone that encompasses the mineralization in the area of the Dark Secret Mine. This is characterized by various clays and hematite, and it runs as well. We've sampled a 40-meter section of this, returned about a half a gram, including a 20-meter section that returned about 1 gram. So this is clay material with some thin veinlets inside of it. To date, mining and exploration on the lower end of Tule Canyon is focused on these two areas. There's been production from underground workings here on the east side mine. There's a little over 100 meters of drifts, stopes, and raises here, and one winze. And there is a small surface, appears to be a dry wash operation, or perhaps a hard rock operation here in the area of the old Dark Secret Mine. This is some aerial footage. We're flying down Tule Canyon looking to the west. You're looking at the Dark Secret Mine on the hillside and underground workings in the gully up the road to the right of it. Looking to the north, once again at the Dark Secret Mine and up Tule Canyon. On the east side of Tule Canyon in shadow is the area of the East Side Mine and the more modern workings. At the Dark Secret Mine on the west side of Tule Canyon, mineralization is hosted in quartz, limonite, hematite veins. Material looks like this. The veins are 10 to 20 centimeters to up to over a meter wide. They persist on strike for tens of meters, but not much longer. They form a stacked vein array. The key feature of these veins in the area of the Dark Secret Mine is they all dip moderately to the east. There are no steeply dipping veins here. The veins are enclosed within a wide clay alteration zone. Consists of illite, smectite, montmorillonite, some hematite, and the rock is surprisingly soft and heavily altered in the area where the veins are found. This is north of the Dark Secret Mine. There's some exploration workings in a little gully here. This is the area where a chip sample returned 0.7 meters at 37 grams from a vein exposed in the wall of this canyon. In more modern times, a dry wash placer or possibly hard rock operation was set up and run here, we believe in the 1980s, with material trucked to another site. I've heard stories in Goldfield that material was trucked from Tule Canyon and put on the leach pad at the Goldfield mine during the 1980s. On the east side of Tule Canyon is the Eastside Mine, which exploits a vein that runs for over 100 meters right in the wall of the canyon. The vein character is notably different than that at the Dark Secret. The bedrock is intact. It's fairly hard, possibly silicified granite. The veins are wider. The vein here is up to 1.5 meters wide with good mineralization, especially in the footwall here. Now, the vein was exploited over a strike length of about 110 meters through a series of adits in from the wall of the Tule Canyon to provide access to the vein. There were a number of stopes, some of which daylight, that were worked here. Material was pulled out through the adits. They mined down to the level of the canyon floor, pulling material down through the stopes, and then they also followed the vein at depth along the winds. To try and unravel the structure and controls on gold mineralization at Strongbox, we ran geophysical surveys on the property in 2017. These consisted of horizontal loop electromagnetic field surveys and total magnetic field surveys. The surveys were run on 50-meter space lines running east-southeast to west-northwest. Let's zoom into the Tule Canyon area and have a look at the results. For reference, this is the area of clay alteration. Here's the Dark Secret mine. Right here would be the Eastside mine. The most significant results were in the 14 kilohertz resistivity. This map shows that data, and the hot colors here are areas of high resistivity. The survey identified a series of sinuous resistivity highs here, which we interpret to be the silicified conduits of a fault system that runs on the east side of Tule Canyon. The Tule Canyon would be running about here in this plot. It's interesting to note that the highest resistivity is associated with the gold mineralization at the Eastside mine and is also in the area where the Dark Secret mine is. So taken together, we believe that these resistivity features delineate a structural corridor that, at least in part, is connected with the mineralization that we find at the lower end of Tule Canyon. Here's what we think is going on at Strongbox. We note first that on a large scale, the gold in bedrock appears to follow a west-southwest to east-northeast trend. We've prospected areas of bedrock exposure surrounding this and have been unable to find anything significant. The gold, however, is hosted in shears and veins that strike dominantly northwest to north, outside the area of Tule Canyon, where they tend to strike northeast to north. This looks to us like a shear deformation zone. Here's a modern analog from an unfortunate property owner in Southern California. There's an incipient strike-slip fault running across his driveway from here to here. The long axis is shown here. It's right lateral, but the shear deformation zone is expressed by a series of gashes or subordinate faults here. This looks to us very much like the situation we see at Strongbox, and the sense of displacement and structure fits very well with the structural setting at Strongbox. This works well except in the area of Tule Canyon. Here, we think what might be going on is that a fault that runs along Tule Canyon has been reactivated as a negative flower structure. Our reason for believing this is that on the west side of Tule Canyon, in the area of the Dark Secret mine, the veins and shears dip moderately to the east, whereas on the east side of Tule Canyon, closer to the center of the structure, we find that the major veins there dip steeply to the east. So this small structural complication is superimposed on the larger shear deformation zone that we see running across the Strongbox area.
So that's the story at Strongbox. We've located widespread surface gold. There's evidence of past production, both hard rock and placer. Our geophysical surveys have identified potential structures beneath the surface gold, and to us, these constitute compelling drill targets. The next step is to test them.